Welcome to Alley Picked. Today I'm going to restore this wicker oak chair. It came from a funeral home, and frankly, that's kind of where it belongs. But when I'm finished with it, it's going to have a new life. The most difficult part of this project is cleanly removing the old spline and glue. I started off by using an awl, but quickly switched to a narrow flat blade screwdriver. You want to be careful here not to bang up the outer edges of the groove. After removing all the old spline, I'm going to go back later and clean and sand the groove thoroughly. I like to use my orbital sander to remove the old finish. This makes quick work of it. My method is to start with a 120 grit and end with a 220, and then do a final sanding using 220 by hand in the direction of the grain. After staining the chair and giving it 2 coats of polyurethane, actually 3 coats on the handles because that's going to get the most wear and tear. Now comes the fun part, replacing the wicker. I've never done it before, but I did watch some videos and figured out a few of my own techniques. Let me show you. I ordered the replacement wicker and spline on Amazon. I didn't shop around too much, but I'll bet you can find it cheaper elsewhere. There's different types of wicker and spline. In choosing the wicker, you measure the distance between the holes. Mine is 1/2 inch, so that's what I ordered. The shape of the spline is tapered. The top is a little bit wider than the bottom. In choosing the width of the spline, you measure the width of the groove. My groove is 3/16 of an inch wide. Looking that up on the spline chart, 3/16 corresponds to a number 8 spline, so that's what I ordered. To clean the groove thoroughly, I used a combination of sandpaper wrapped around a metal ruler, a small chisel, and a small file to scrape out all that old dried glue. Here's what it looked like before, and here's what it looks like after. The spline should fit loosely into the groove. There is a back side and a front side to this wicker, or you can also call it cane webbing, but be sure not to install it backwards. Before we can install the new backing, we have to soften the webbing and the spline. We do this by soaking them in water for about 20 minutes, no longer than 30, or they're going to get too soft and break apart during installation. I made these 4 wedges out of scrap wood, which I used to hold the webbing in place during the install. I also tapered down this paint stick and rounded the edges. I'll use this clothespin piece to push down the webbing in the rounded corners. I cut the wicker so it overlaps about 1 inch on each side. I'm removing the string which holds the strands in place. I'm also going to remove any strands that are outside of the groove. This makes it easier to press the material into the groove. As I'm pounding in each of the wedges, I'm making sure that it's lined up parallel to the groove. You don't want this to be noticeably crooked. Using the paint stick, I'm pressing the cane strands down into the groove all the way. It doesn't require a lot of pressure since the cane was softened in the water. I've seen some people cut this excess webbing using a utility knife. I'm using a sharp 3/4 inch chisel and mallet. Very important, you don't want to accidentally chip the wood here, so be sure to line up the chisel about 1/16 of an inch below the surface. Now it's starting to look like it's supposed to. We just need to install the spline. Fill the groove with glue and be generous with it. There may be some special adhesive to do this, but I've seen some people just use Elmer's white glue. I decided to use Titebond wood glue. I begin by cutting the spline at a 45-degree angle, which I'm going to match up on the other end. Press it in and start pounding. The top of the spline should be even with the wicker. If the spline doesn't go in or it slips in too easily, you probably bought the wrong spline. The softened spline will bend easily around the curved corners. If the corners were a sharp right angle, I would need to cut them at each of the corners. Since the original cane webbing was darker, I decided to put this amber shellac on top as a sealer and to protect it. I think it looks great. This funeral home chair, which was ready to be embalmed, has now risen from the dead. I hope you enjoyed this video. If so, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to Alley Picked, and if you want to know whenever I bring other things back to life, click on that notification bell. Until next time, I'll meet you in the alley.